Why do we like music? First, let's start with a brief history of music. Music has been around since prehistoric times. Historians believe the first kind of music may have been invented in Africa 55,000 years ago. The first musical instrument was probably the human voice. Different regions in the world have developed music differently. For example, much of the music developed in Africa has strong rhythmic undertones, while in India, much of the music developed is characterized to be monotonic or based off a single melody. What chemicals are involved? A study in McGill found that dopamine, a chemical associated with feel-good stimuli, was released in the human brain when listening to music. Levels of dopamine were found to be up to 9% higher in subjects listening to music. Dopamine release is also associated with eating food and taking drugs. One of the purposes of dopamine is creating a response that humans associate with a necessity for survival. Basically, when dopamine is released, the ancient human instinct of survival is reinforced with behavior that caused the release. This means that when dopamine is released during listening to music, the brain associates this with a need for survival. What happens to the brain when listening to music? The brain's ability to listen to music, otherwise known as organized sound, is even more effective than a computer's ability to process organized sound. The auditory cortex is the part of the brain that processes sound, but music activates parts of the brain linked to memory and emotion as well. One scientist says there are entire regions of our brain dedicated to the listening of the music, like the amygdala. Music activates the regions of the brain linked to anticipation and experience as well. It links to the limbic system, which is the emotional part of the brain. How do humans respond to music? Listening to music you like causes the release of dopamine, but listening to music you don't like will actually affect the region of the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala processes things like decision-making and emotional responses. Studies show that listening to music you don't like causes the amygdala to generate a fight or flight response and release adrenaline. Our brains may have co-evolved to use music as a way of communication. How does music function in a human society? Dr. Daniel Levitin has a lot to say about the way humans use music in their daily lives. A lot of people use a certain type of music to get going in the morning, to get out of bed, to get them through an exercise workout, to calm themselves down at the end of the day. We're using music in the same way we use drugs, really for emotional regulation, partly because of the way it can modulate our neurochemistry, affecting our moods. There are things music can do for us that language can't. I know, for example, if you're feeling really uptight or stressed, you've had a bad day, you've had a fight with somebody, words sometimes aren't as soothing as the right piece of music. As another example, look at love songs. I think the reason they exist is that they're able to communicate in an emotional way that words alone just can't.